In this video, we're going to be reviewing how to factor trinomials, okay? So I'm going to be doing 4 different problems with you, okay? On the first one, as you can see, a is 1. So we're going to do a problem when a is 1. On number 2, 3, and 4, as you can see, a, which is the number in front of the coefficient of x squared, it's different from 1. So I'm going to do 2 in a box method, number 3 in the grouping method, and number 4 in the big X method. So this way I show you the 3 different methods that we can use. So let's start on number 1, which is when a is 1. So first of all, in factoring in general, when you look at an expression, you try to find a GCF between them. If there is no GCF and it's a trinomial, then you have to look at the a, at the b, and at the c. A in this case is 1, b is -4, and c is -12. You always need to find 2 numbers that would multiply to give you ac, which is in this case 1 times -12, which is -12, and would add to give me b, which is in this case -4. So think of 2 numbers that could multiply to give you -12 and add to give you -4. If you have trouble finding these 2 numbers, what you can do is you can go to y equals and put a times c, which is in this case -12 over x. Then you go to the second table. Then you try to find all the whole numbers that would add to give me -4. Okay? So the x and the y that would add to give you -4. Now, this is if you're having trouble finding the 2 numbers. But if you think about it, if you multiply -6 and 2, -6 times 2 is -12, and -6 plus 2 is -4. So we just found the numbers. Once you find the numbers, then that's it. You're done factoring because a is 1. Then your 2 factors are just x minus 6. So you take the 2 numbers that you just found and you put an x in front of it. So x minus 6 and x plus 2. So you just got the 2 factors that you have. Again, if you want to check, you can put this in y1, this in y2, and you graph it. If you get the same graph, it means that your answer is correct. So this is how you graph or how you factor when a is 1. You just find the 2 numbers and you're done. Now let's move on to number 2. 3x to the second plus 13x minus 10, and I need to factor this one. Now again, try to find a GCF, and there's no GCF between these 3 terms. So my next step, since this is a trinomial, is to think of a, b, and c. A is the number in front of the x squared, b is the number in front of x, and c is the number in front of -10. So think of 2 numbers that would multiply to give me ac, and a times c in this case is -30. Think of 2 numbers that would add to give me 13. So I'm going to take -30 on this side. I'm going to think of all the things that will, or numbers that would multiply to give me -30. So let me think. It's -3 and 10. So -3 times 10 is -30, but they will not add up to 13. They will add up to 7. So that's not it. Think of another 2 numbers that would multiply to give you -30. 15 and 2. So one of them has to be negative. Let's say that the 2 is negative. 15 times -2 is -30. That's correct. And when you add them, you get 13. Okay? So the 2 numbers are 15 and -2. Now, if a is 1, then you're done. Then the 2 factors are x plus 15 and x minus 2. But here, a is not 1. A is 3. So how can we solve this? What you do is you create a box. And in the first box, so I'm using the box method for this problem, you put the first term. In the last box, you put the constant, which is -10. In the second and the third box, instead of putting 13x, you split it into 15 and -2, and you put x for each one of them. Okay? Now what you need to do is to find the factors vertically and horizontally. So what's common between 3x squared and 15x? 3x. What's common between negative 2x and negative 10? Negative 2. What's the common factor between 3x squared and negative 2x? Just x. And what's the common factor between 15x and negative 10? I can see a 5. So, don't forget this is a positive 5, so these are my two factors. 3x minus 2 and x plus 5. Now remember, once you factor, once you find AC and find the two numbers that would multiply to give you AC and add to give you B, you're not done if A is different from 1. If A is like a number, like 3 in this case, then you have to continue working. And this method was the box method. So let's move on to number 3. In this case, we're going to be using the grouping method. So first of all, check, is there any GCF? Is there greatest common factor between them? No, they don't have any factors in common, so I need to move on. A is 5, B is 14, and C is 8. So you need to find two numbers that would multiply to give me AC, which is in this case 5 times 8, which is a 40, and would add to give me 14, which is B. What are the two numbers? This is very simple to see. So 4 times 10 is a 40, and 4 plus 10 is 14. Now, in the grouping method, what you do is you copy the first term and you copy the last term. And what you do is you split 14x, the middle term, into these two numbers. So you put 4x and 10x. Okay? So you split the middle term into the two numbers that you just found. Don't forget to put an x next to these two numbers. Now what you need to do is to group these two together and these two together. Now what's common between 5x to the second and 4x? There's just an x in common. So what's going to be left is 5x plus 4. Now again, you can distribute to double check. This is 5x squared and this is 4x, so we're good. Now what's common between these two? I can see a 2 in common between them. So 2 times what would give me 10x? 5x. And 2 times what would give me 8? 4. Now how can you know that you're right? You should always have a repeating GCF. So you take this repeating GCF out. So that's going to be your first factor. And now what's going to be left is x plus 2 will be your second factor. And this is how you factor using grouping method. Okay? Now remember, you had to use this method because A is different from 1. So if A is different from 1, you can either use the box method, the grouping method, and now I'm going to show you how you can use the third method. Again, check if there is any common factor. There is no common factors between them. So your second step is to think of A, B, and C. A is 12, B is 1, C is negative 1. So you have to think of two numbers that would multiply to give you AC and add to give you B. My AC in this case is negative 12 and my B is 1. So think of two numbers that would multiply to give me negative 12 and add to give me 1. I can think of 4. You know what, let me just take my time and show you how you can find the factors. So think of all the factors of negative 12. They could be 6 and 2, so one of them is going to be negative. 6 times negative 2 is negative 12, but 6 and negative 2, if you add them, it's going to be a 4, so it's not a 1, so it doesn't work. 12 and negative 1. 12 times negative 1 is a negative 12, but if you add them, it will be 11, so no, you need 1. Think of other two numbers that you can multiply to give you 12. 4 and negative 3. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12, and you add them, you get 1. So the two numbers are 4 and negative 3. Now, once you find the numbers, what you can do is you can take them and write them on the side. Now, remember, you have to divide by A once you find the numbers. So let's write that down, divide by A. Then simplify the fraction if you can. Now, if I simplify the first fraction, I get 1/3. If I simplify the second fraction, so they're both divisible by 3, so I'm going to left with 1/4, negative 1/4. So divide the two numbers that you just found by a, simplify the fraction if you can, and then remember 1/3 is plus 1/3, okay? Put x in front of both of these two fractions that you got, and these are your two factors. Now remember at the end, bottoms up. So the 3, which is on the bottom of the fraction, becomes the coefficient of x. And the 4, which is on the bottom of the fraction for 1/4, will become the coefficient of x. And this is how you solve using big X. Again, at any time, you can check your work by playing this in y1, this in y2, and graph it. If you get the same graph, then you are correct. Or you can FOIL. If you're not allowed to use a calculator, you can FOIL, and you should end up with this expression. Okay. I hope this tutorial was helpful.